Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show, where you'll find health and fitness inspiration, motivation, and information shared in 15-minute episodes. Tune in while getting a move on to make leading and enjoying the benefits of a healthy lifestyle almost too easy. It's the Fit 15. And now your host, Catherine Basu.
Welcome to the Fit 15 podcast show. I'm your host, Catherine Basu. And today on the Fit 15, I'm going to be talking about making cooking fun with Rebecca Lewis, who is a registered dietitian who's on a mission to change the world by empowering people to take control of their health. Her previous role as the lead dietitian for HelloFresh, a global meal kit company, has made her an expert at recipe development and nutrition analysis, as well as culinary education and cooking demonstrations. Rebecca is an active media authority for health and wellness and has conducted TV and radio interviews, as well as contributed to hundreds of health articles. As a fitness enthusiast, she is a part of the CrossFit community and thrives on all the challenges and rewards that come with pushing herself in the gym. She also enjoys the aerial arts, running, dancing, and yoga. Rebecca, welcome to the Fit 15. I am so excited to have you as my guest today.
Thank you.
So we chatted before the podcast and you shared that home cooking is one of your big passions. So I'd love to know where that started and if you could share a little bit more about that just to get us started with our interview.
Absolutely. Well, my passion for cooking, like most people, started with my mom. I can remember when I was a little girl, she would put me up on the counter and she'd let me watch when I was really little. And then as I got older, and she would let me mix or stir or measure. And I just have really fond memories of being in the kitchen with my mom. And I was lucky enough to have a family that sat down every single night together around the dinner table. So I really am a product of a family who cooked at home a lot. And it's interesting because more and more the research is showing that people are spending less time engaging in cooking at home. And for me, I'm a registered dietitian and I have a special passion for empowering people to have a healthy lifestyle by encouraging them to cook at home more. I really feel like the best way to control what you put in your body is to be the one in control of cooking and organizing the recipes and the meals you consume. So I know the power that food can have as a registered dietitian. It's incredibly powerful on our health. It can be incredibly damaging to the point that it can cause obesity and heart disease and weight gain, but food can also be powerful in a positive way. It can improve our brain functioning, our energy levels, our mood. So there's a lot of ways to use food. And personally, I lost my mom when I was pretty young, and so was my mom. And it was a big driver for me to understand our food system more, to understand the impact that food can have on our bodies. And I went back to school to get my master's in nutrition because of that curiosity. And what I found while I was in school is these problems that we have in the confusion and the misunderstanding around food, it's a widespread problem. And there's so much of an impact that I can have as a dietitian in helping to clarify some of those confusing topics around food, and more importantly, helping to shift the mindset so that people have a healthy relationship with the foods that they eat.
No, I love that. Yeah, you're right. There really is kind of, we either think of food as kind of the enemy or, something, and those of us who have experienced its power as, something that can be good for us, know that, but often we just, I think as a society more, we kind of are like worried about what are we supposed to eat and what is healthy. And there's all those things that may or may not really be true if we talk to our registered dietitian friends, but no, that's awesome. So I think a lot of us intuitively know that cooking at home is better, but could you highlight some of the reasons why it is and what the difference is between having the same, cuisine out at a restaurant versus in our own kitchen?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, the research around this. So if you look statistically, what the research shows is that 50% of the average American's budgeted food dollars are in fact being spent on meals prepared outside the home.
Mm.
And what does that mean? I mean, eating outside the home could entail eating at a sit-down restaurant. It could mean eating at a fast food drive-through. It could mean even purchasing pre-cooked meals at the grocery store. But the similarity between all of these different types of meals is basically that they are assembled and they're cooked by someone outside of your kitchen. And as a consequence, you aren't in control of how those food makers prepare the food. Interestingly, these outsourced foods are statistically less healthy and they typically cost more. And why are they less healthy? They tend to be higher in fat, sugar, sodium, and they definitely have less fruits, vegetables, and fiber. And when you compare that with foods that are prepared at home, typically those foods are going to be higher in the fruits, vegetables, fiber, and they're going to be lower in the salt, sugar, and fat because you're watching yourself cook.
Right.
You see how much salt you're putting in the foods and you can control that. Whereas, it's like a study of chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you put the salt in, you can't take it back out. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're at home, you can gradually add things to your own personal preference or dietary needs. So eating outsourced meals is something that is just becoming more and more common.
Sure. And I guess if you're talking to someone, maybe you have a client as a registered dietitian who, you want to get to cook at home more, how would you kind of help someone do that?
Yeah, well, it's okay. So it's interesting because if you ask people, why aren't you cooking at home? What's the barriers? What's preventing you from doing that? On the surface level, it's almost across the board a similar answer, which is people will say that they lack the time.
Hi, friends, it's Catherine. If you're joining us and only have 15 minutes for an out and back walk, you want to turn around now. All right, back to Rebecca.
That their lives are just so incredibly busy and they're in a chronic state of time deficiency that it seems like there's just not enough time in the day to prepare the meals. And on top of that, there's a mindset that cooking is a really lengthy process and that you're going to have to invest a lot of time to even consider cooking at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say on the surface, that's what people will give as a reason for why they're not cooking at home. But if you really dig a little bit deeper, if you take a deeper dive into why people aren't cooking, the deeper level is that people lack the skills and the confidence
Mm-hmm.
to really feel like their cooking adventures won't end up in a disaster. And there are some studies that have shown that the lack of confidence around a person's cooking skills is positively correlated with an increased purchase of meals that are prepared away from the home. So this lack of self-efficacy, what it does is it contributes to a mindset that cooking is difficult and it's undesirable.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone who's looking at wanting to cook at home more, the very, very first step is going to be shifting that mindset a little bit. You have to consider that cooking doesn't just start at the stovetop.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking starts in our mind with the thought of a recipe, visually going to the store and picking out the ingredients, getting excited about what you're going to cook. And if you can get people to move away from the mindset that cooking is a chore that's unpleasant and shift that more to the mindset that, hey, cooking is fun, there are benefits, there are motivators for me to want to do this, the likelihood that they'll stay in the kitchen and cook, they're going to go up. Now, there's going to be ways to get yourself motivated, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to remember what those reasons are too. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But
Sure.
Yeah, I would just say if you want to start cooking, one of the most interesting things that the research shows is that the biggest predictor of how much you're going to enjoy your cooking is basically determined by how good your cooking skills are. So I put this in terms of like, when you think about going to the gym, you will maybe initially feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go. I'm tired and I'd just rather go home and relax. But you get to the gym and you get on the treadmill or you're lifting weights, whatever you're doing, you're taking a class. And at the end of it, you do feel good. And the next day you go, it gets a little easier. And the next day you go, it gets a little easier. And if you give yourself enough time of repeating the behavior of going in, you start to get really good at working out. You start to improve your time. You start to lift heavier. Your dance coordination goes up and you start to look forward to going to these classes. And it really is the same with cooking. You need to build a habit. And the way that your cooking skills are going to improve is by repetitively getting yourself in the kitchen and trying new things until you get really comfortable knowing that if I do this particular technique, this is the outcome. And that confidence is really going to make the experience of cooking more enjoyable.
I love that. I don't know if you've heard, because I love how you have all this research that you have all these stats on top of your head. But one thing I heard it, and I forget what the number is, but there's a certain number of meals, like people will end up just rotating through a certain number of meals.
Yep.
So is that something, like, can you talk about that? Maybe like we could find, I don't know if it's helpful, maybe you could talk about this from your experience as a registered dietitian, if it's helpful to find like 5 good healthy meals and how we could try to find those in addition to that.
Yeah, I mean, people get into your recipe rut, absolutely, because it's for that. It kind of ties into what I just was talking about. You want to cook when you feel confident that you know how the outcome will turn out, and so you end up doing the things you can do really well because you have an expectation. Like if making spaghetti is your go-to recipe or making tacos is your go-to recipe, by the way, 2 of like the most popular cuisines Americans like, Mexican and Italian.
Yep.
You're going to go to those a lot because, if I do this recipe, it's going to take me less than 30 minutes. It's going to be quick. I already know what I need to do. I know the ingredients I need to buy. So it's familiar. The problem with getting stuck in a recipe rut is your brain actually fatigues of eating the same things over and over and over again, especially things that have distinctive tastes. And it's biologically, it's a good thing to have that fatigue because a good part of healthy eating is diversity in the diet. You want to eat lots of different types of foods because every food has a different profile nutritionally of protein, carbs, fat, vitamins, minerals. And so it's important that you're constantly seeking a varied diet. And getting stuck in the recipe rut is eventually going to make you get tired of eating those same things and then seek out food prepared outside the home. So really having a little bit of confidence to experiment in the kitchen can be a way to add that diversity, even to recipes that maybe you have made a many times before. So for example, if you love potatoes, which Americans love potatoes, there's a lot of different ways to cook them. You can boil them, you can saute them, you can roast them, you can mash them. There are a lot of ways to change the cooking technique. What you pair the potato with can be interesting and change the way the potato tastes. Do you put it in a soup? Do you put it in as a side to something protein based? Do you load it up? Do you swap it out with sweet potatoes? I mean, there's just so many ways to make food interesting. Do you use different spices on it? Are you using fresh herbs? So even within the potato category, there's lots of different types of potatoes. There's purple potatoes and red potatoes and little small fresh baby potatoes and big old Yukon or Idaho potatoes. There's a lot of examples of way to take something that you have some familiarity with, and then stepping just outside the comfort zone by adding something new to the familiar.
I love that because I have a small group fitness program that I'm running now, and maybe you can give a better answer to this question based on your experience. But when I try to get people to eat more whole fruits and vegetables, and so someone had asked, "What's the best one to eat?" And I'm like, "Well, I'd
Mhm.
probably start with the one you already enjoy and having
Yep.
that more often." But
Yep.
do you have any insights beyond that? Just some good things that they should. I mean, I always talk about like cruciferous vegetables are good, but are there any insights you have, like if we're trying to try new things, how can we get ourselves excited about taking that step? What are some strategies there?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier that there are some motivators to getting yourself in the kitchen and cooking. And one of those is that opportunity for creativity. So, I
Mm,
mean, as an adult, we don't get instant gratification very often in our lives. We don't get to really play, and
mm,
we lack sort of this opportunity to be imaginative. I mean, maybe not for everybody, but generally speaking,
sure.
our lives are a little bit more predictable. And
Mhm,
so for me, I really view cooking as this opportunity for creativity, and a way to express yourself. But it does require a ability and a willingness to try something new, to step outside that
mhm,
comfort zone. And
mhm,
I mean, you want to understand that there's maybe a risk of working with an ingredient or a technique that you're not familiar with, and dive into it regardless. And actually, there is research to show that having creative expression in your life does contribute to well-being. And when you talk
mhm.
about healthy lifestyle, it's not just food and fitness, it is
Right.
also the outside activities of support and your social settings, your emotional well-being, your sleep. And so we need these creative opportunities, and it's fun to be in the kitchen. It's like working with Legos is how I think of it when I was a kid. Like, you have all these different shapes and colors, and you get to build something from them. And that's, to me, what cooking is like.
Mhm,
It's a playtime.
mhm,
And so I mean, that opportunity for creativity, major motivator for working with foods you're unfamiliar with. But there are a couple other things too, and I'm going to just touch on it, but that opportunity even for social bonding.
mm,
A lot of studies will show that people are more likely to cook when they're cooking for someone else. And part of that is because you're developing a lot of positive aspects when you cook for somebody. You're setting up the opportunity to initiate a conversation, and that can lead to a feeling of connectedness
sure.
between a spouse, a friend, your children. Um, in other words, like that importance of the social aspects of the meal, the sharing it with others, what it leads to are all of the positive memories that we tend to have very deeply rooted in the familiar happy moments we have around food and
Mhm,
eating.
mhm.
So it's that opportunity for social bonding, and even the opportunity for appreciation, because let me tell you, even if you're not cooking for someone else, um, you maybe are cooking and you're posting your beautiful food pictures on social media, and people who look at those pictures will reach out and say, "Oh my goodness, like that looks so delicious," or "Wow, I wish I were eating that tonight." And there's a reward in that, because it gives the person who's cooking a sense of prestige and pride for the effort that they put in. And really, those feelings of approval, when they're communicated, whether it's from a social media audience or a family member, it's a motivating factor to want to have the cook keep cooking, to get that response, elicit that positive feedback. So, um, yeah, the opportunity for creativity, the opportunity for social bonding, and for appreciation. And then there's also, maybe you are like myself, I just cook for me, I'm cooking
Mhm.
for one, but there's an opportunity even within cooking for mindfulness. And again, when you're talking about healthy lifestyle, you really do want to have some mental and emotional support as well. And taking time to slow down, to turn off all of the electronic devices that we have in our lives, the
Mm-hmm.
TV, the cell phones, the laptop, turning them off and just being fully in the moment, being able to concentrate on recipe instructions, to gather the ingredients, the sound of the chopping, the measuring, the stirring. I mean, all of these really have an ability when you're mindfully in the moment of cooking to reduce your stress levels.
Sure.
And it really is a relief from, the stream of texts and emails and media, and actually even for me, my own thoughts, because I have just a
Right.
running stream of thoughts that go through my head all the time. And it's just, cooking to me is that acceptable moment of permission to slow down,
Mm-hmm.
find some balance, and at the same time be productive. So I mean, all of those things are big motivators to kind of get you in the right mindset to cook. And then, of course, as a dietitian,
Mm-hmm.
the one that's the most important to me is that cooking at home is the opportunity to prepare yourself a more nutritious meal. We talked
Sure.
about cooking at home, providing higher amounts of fruits, vegetables, fiber. And it's because the act of cooking inherently teaches you what healthy food choices look like.
Mm.
It's interesting. There was a study done a few years ago, and they looked at enjoyment in cooking. And what they found is there's a greater degree of enjoyment from food if we're the ones preparing the food ourselves. And that's because the more energy we put into cooking, the more we value the resulting efforts. So if it's even interesting because even the types of food you cook for yourself can determine how happy you feel about that food. So we enjoy our own cooking less when we know the food we're making is unhealthy, because we can visually see ourselves putting the things we want to moderate into the food. So
Right.
it's so interesting. It's just overall the reasons that we decide to eat have so many variables, whether the food is seasonal, fresh, culturally appropriate, the convenience and the time to prepare the meal, the cost of the ingredients, there's what it's going to taste like, the flavor. There's so many reasons we go and make decisions around what we're going to eat. And the eating is just one part of it. All of the other aspects, the cooking and the planning, they really do contribute to a sense and a confidence about why you would want to be involved in being the one to select those recipes, those ingredients, and eventually select and or elect to work in the kitchen.
Yeah. So I guess just maybe to close out, Rebecca, because I think, for me, I never thought about the skill being an issue, and not because I have great cooking skills, just because I try to choose things that are easy. So do you have any recommended resources, like maybe websites that you enjoy that have good recipes, or other solutions that could help us improve our skill level, or find some of those, nutritious options that might not
Yeah.
be difficult?
Yeah. So a couple things. I really do think that the excitement and the pleasure we get starts in the planning phase. So explore, get inspired about the ingredients that you're selecting. I like to know, where does my food come from? Who is the
Mm-hmm.
farmer? Who is the rancher?
Mm-hmm.
Look up on the website where the food is coming from. Is the fish that you're sourcing well caught, sustainably farmed? Who's the one feeding the fish? The strawberries that you get, are they from someplace local? Are you able to go visit? I mean, just kind of getting invested in those ingredients, even understanding that, hey, I love tomatoes, but did you know that tomatoes actually offer more lycopene when they're cooked than when they're raw? Well, that might inspire you to try a recipe with cooked tomatoes. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
lycopene is that particular nutrient that makes your skin glow and radiant. So maybe that's going to be the backstory that gets you excited to work with tomatoes.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think it's important just to learn a little bit about each ingredient and the functionality that it can provide for you. There's the internet is just an amazing place to go and learn a little bit about fruits and vegetables. And then if you do buy from a particular brand, just going to the brand's website, looking at their mission statements and how they treat the animals they're raising and the love that they put into growing the foods that you eventually buy. So, I mean, that's step one for me. Step two, go into a spice shop. It's so fun to figure out that you can take chicken, something that universally people are pretty comfortable eating and working with, and realize that if you combine that chicken with tomatoes and basil, boom, you're going to have this Italian flavor profile. And if you change that up and you combine the chicken with ginger, garlic, and soy sauce, you're going to have this Asian flair to the chicken. And then if you switch it up again and maybe you want to do something Mexican style, you do black beans and cumin, and all of a sudden it's like these flavors can really get you excited to work with something and really vary the way the food tastes for you. So,
yeah, it's such a good point. I feel like we don't often, at least in our, in Americans don't often think about spices as much, but it really, you can make the food taste so much better without having to add a lot of unhealthy things, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, truthfully, if cooking is not something that you're comfortable with yet, I mean, you want to keep it simple. Don't start with a recipe that has 30 ingredients. Start with something that's like 10 ingredients or less, so that one, you have better likelihood of finding all those ingredients, and you won't feel like you have to invest so much into the recipe to begin with. But I mean, my top 3 favorite ways to add flavor into the foods that I cook, and it constantly amazes my family. They always want to know how I made things, and they're shocked how simple they are, is to use fresh herbs, basil, thyme, rosemary, tarragon, cilantro, chives. It's amazing the flavor you can get using fresh herbs. Using spices, my go-to, and I use it so frequently: garlic, cumin, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, a little bit of chili powder or cayenne. It really just can make a huge difference. I love to work with vinegars. It is incredible how much flavor you can add to your vegetables, especially vegetables that are a little more bitter, like your leafy greens. You can reduce that bitterness by adding an acid like a vinegar and add flavor. And then lastly, any kind of citrus zest. I love to zest lemons over just about everything that I make. One of my simplest ways to add flavor is to zest lime and squeeze a little bit of it into Greek yogurt and use that as a sauce. It's delicious, and it's so easy. It's 2 ingredients, and it makes a big impact. So, don't be afraid to experiment and try those different things. As far as doing that, though, you do want to make sure that you have the right tools. Like if you're going to zest, you need a zester. So
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference between like just buying lemon zest versus actually zesting it yourself. There's a difference. It tastes better.
Absolutely. And I mean, as far as like a resource for like making cooking more fun, the radio is one of the best ones for me. I mean, you want to put yourself in a good mood. If you're in a good mood, you're going to like the cooking more, and music has that power to sort of transport us into a happy place. And I like to turn the radio on and dance around the kitchen a little bit. Maybe I pour myself a glass of wine, but like putting yourself in that good mood can be a resource to making cooking more fun. So, I mean, I'm all about adding the fun element in, because the more times that we have a memory of the cooking being enjoyable, the more we're going to want to do it again. And maybe that for you means inviting someone in to join you in the kitchen and cooking. And maybe even just making the act of cooking and eating special, like dress up the dining room table, put some flowers on, or like pull out the fancy silverware and plateware, make it feel like a moment that you're celebrating. and it will just really encourage you to be more involved in the kitchen.
I love that. Well, definitely some great ideas that I don't always think of. So I love that. Love the good perspective, and I definitely invite or encourage people to go and follow you on Instagram, because I mean it will make you a little bit hungry, but you definitely have some inspiring recipes and good pictures. So
Yeah, I would love to share my recipes and get people's thoughts, because I really feed off of the creativity of someone saying, well, I love this, but how can I make it healthier? Or I've never worked with turmeric before. What can I do with it? And just being able to engage and start a conversation and get people excited. I mean, that's what I'm all about. There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing someone's eyes sort of open and their mind open, and then they want to run to the kitchen,
Yep.
race home to make dinner because they're really looking forward to it. That makes me so excited.
Yeah. So on that note, where can people go? I'll put this in the show notes, but just so they have it in their mind, in case they're not able to go look at the show notes right now, where can people go and connect and find you? And I appreciate you offering them to ask questions, because I'm going to send my challenge members your way.
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Rebecca Lewis RD, RebeccalewisRD.
Awesome.
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. You'll see lots and lots of pictures of that I cook and eat, and you'll see some pictures of me doing a lot of the fitness stuff that I do as well. I am a pretty big CrossFit fan, and I like to do yoga and run, and so you'll see all sorts of interesting things on my feed.
No, it's good, a good, well-rounded routine, it sounds like. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Rebecca, for being on the show. I know people love hearing from registered dietitians, so it's really great to have you. I know people are going to love this episode, and yeah, I appreciate you spending the time.
Awesome. I just hope that I have encouraged your listeners to get in the kitchen and have some fun. If I did that, I'm super happy.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Fit 15. For show notes and more, visit fitarmadillo.com/podcast. See you next time.